Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. The sudden appearance of the tentacles took Yi Tianxian by surprise. She tried to block the incoming tentacles with her wave-like energy. Boom. 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 The tentacles slammed against Yi Tianxian's energy wall violently. Yu Shangrong shot toward Yi Tianxian with his sword in hand at lightning speed. I slay fiend Zen cultivators for breakfast. BZZT. A fan-shaped energy shot out from the longevity sword. Yu Shangrong wielded the longevity sword with both hands and swung it downward. At this moment, the terrifying power of the longevity sword seemed to be fully displayed. The energy seemed to cut off the black golden lotus avatar. Bam! The avatar cracked. Kong Yuan's eyes widened. His palms remained joined together when he saw the black avatar being cut open. The impact of that attack sent him reeling back. The rope that was tied around him snapped at this moment. He continued to fly backward. Yu Shangrong did not even deign to spare a glance at Kong Yuan. He knew Kong Yuan was just a corpse, a puppet that was being controlled. He looked at Yi Tianxian behind him who was currently being attacked by the tentacles and said, "Junior sister, defend with your golden lotus." Oh. Yu Shangrong's eyes gleamed at this moment. He began to fly out at blinding speed toward Zhang Yuanshan. Meanwhile, Yi Tianxian's avatar had retreated. Her golden lotus bloomed and kept the tentacles at bay. In front of Zhang Yuanshan, there were many tentacles. They were like a thicket of vines that kept whipping at the air. The tentacles were shrouded in purple energy. When Zhang Yuanshan saw that Kong Yuan was sent flying, he instinctively looked up at Yu Shangrong, the sword devil. Yu Shangrong had his back toward the gray sky and he was charging toward Zhang Yuanshan in the air at a 45-degree angle. With every step he took, a ripple would appear under his feet. The golden ripples seemed to distort space itself. As he continued to move, his body seemed to turn blurry. In fact, everything in the surroundings seemed out of focus. It was as though everything was submerged in water. It lent a surreal quality to the surroundings. This was the sword skill Yu Shangrong was famous for, the return and enter three souls. The three souls referred to the first sword, the origin radiance, which was the chi of great purity and the sun. The second soul is the majestic spirit, the transformation of yin chi. The third soul is the nether essence, the impurities of yin chi. Everyone who cultivated possessed three souls. The origin radiance is the nascent divinity. This was where the nascent divinity tribulation realm derived its name from. The return and enter three souls. Three swords and three paths attacked at the same time. The three swords merged as one to sever the three souls, thereby obliterating the target's body and soul. Yu Shangrong did not merely have three figures. His clones seemed to possess avatars of their own as well. Three golden lotuses descended from the sky. This scene far exceeded Zhang Yuanshan's expectations. His eyes widened in horror as he watched the three clones merged into one. Ba ma. Help. Me. A deep voice rang in Zhang Yuanshan's ears. I've told you that you only have 2 to 3 chances. This third chance will cost you your life. You. Silence descended on the entire place at this moment. Zhang Yuanshan wanted to pull on the rope and defend himself with Kong Yuan's corpse. Unfortunately, Kong Yuan was long gone. He laughed maniacally upon discovering this. Forget it, forget it. At this moment, the longevity sword pierced Zhang Yuanshan's body. His body trembled violently as he continued to laugh maniacally. It felt as though his soul had been pierced as well. However, he did not stop laughing. The sound of his laughter traveled far all the way to the green jade altar. Currently, the battle could no longer be seen from the green jade altar. All that could be heard was this maniacal laughter. Upon hearing this, the Nether Sect's disciples shivered in fear. After a moment, they heard a shout from afar. I've been a coward all my life. Today, I, Zhang Yuanshan, will embrace death like an old friend. Zhang Yuanshan was in the center as his energy spilled into the surroundings. The tentacles whipped around even more violently. This was his true third chance. The ultimate move that Manhwa had planted in him. Sacrificial offering, a peculiar voice said. Zhang Yuanshan shouted, even if I have to die, I'll drag you along with me. Once the sacrificial offering was completed, the tentacles shot toward Yu Shangrong and Yi Tianxin in a frenzy. The entire place seemed to be filled with tentacles. Yi Tianxian had already retreated far away as she repelled the tentacles. Meanwhile, Yu Shangrong was still at the center of the fight. When he saw the tentacles that seemed to come at him from all directions, he swung his sword fiercely. His sword moved like the wind and merely left vague shadows in its wake as his slashes rained down like a storm. There were no energy blades. The red shining blade was all that could be seen moving back and forth. A spherical energy formed around him at this moment. Yu Shangrong's expression darkened. For some reason, the scene of his master training him in sword skills surfaced in his mind. He was told to practice his sword play under the trees in autumn, and he had to slash at all the falling leaves. During summer, he would be training under the rain and would have to remain dry. In the winter, he was told to train under the snow, and he had to dodge all the snowflakes. He lost count of the number of wooden swords he broke in the process. He would receive a good beating whenever he broke a sword. His master said that a true sword path elite would love his own sword and would never allow his sword to be easily destroyed. It was only when he managed to keep his wooden sword intact that his master granted him the longevity sword. The longevity sword bore the blessings of a long life. This was the best gift for the inhabitants of the nobleman country who had short lifespans. This sword was everything to Yu Shangrong. He had become one with his sword. If you want to kill your opponent, just swing your sword forcefully. Lu Zhou's advice appeared in Yu Shangrong's mind, and he swung his sword at a greater speed. The tentacles that approached were all cut, and the purple energy was kept at bay by the sword's shadows. From afar, Yi Tianxin was dumbstruck when she witnessed this scene. She knew that her second senior brother was powerful, but she did not expect him to be so powerful to this extent. Then, she looked at the purple energy that permeated the air and the tentacles lashing around before she tossed her amorous hoop out. The amorous hoop plunged into the sea of tentacles and released a burst of energy. The blue waves technique slowed the advances of the tendrils. At this moment, Yi Tianxin shouted, "Second senior brother." Yu Shangrong made a noise of acknowledgement. His 100-foot avatar shot toward the horizon as it increased in size. Energy blades spread out like the petals of a lotus in the air. Boom! The tentacles were severed by the countless energy blades. At the same time, the golden lotus under Yu Shangrong's avatar kept the tentacles at bay like lotus leaves. With the golden lotus in the center, the longevity sword flew out and continued cutting the tentacles. With a casual glance, it looked like a vortex had appeared. The energy of the tentacles seemed to be immediately reduced by a huge margin. Yi Tianxin felt the pressure around her lift at once. She recalled her avatar, somersaulted in the air before she looked at the scene before her incredulously. Is this the sword devil? Yu Shangrong did not hold back as he wielded and swung his sword. The rapid expansion of his avatar, coupled with the movements of his sword that seemed to form a vortex, kept the tentacles at bay. Gradually, the tentacles began to dwindle and fall in numbers. Everything was silent again. Yu Shangrong stood within his avatar. He extended his arms as he tried to control his avatar. The 100 Tribulations Insight avatar required too much energy to maintain. It was rare for a cultivator to maintain 100 Tribulations Insight avatar for such a long time. Yi Tianxin was still in shock. After a long while, the purple energy finally vanished. Zhang Yuanshan's body was nowhere to be seen. Yu Shangrong pulled his arms back and fisted his hands. His avatar vanished. The massive golden lotus paused slightly. Yu Shangrong looked at the golden lotus. The 8 golden and shining lotus leaves spun at a uniform speed. There was a faint sheen of purple on the lotus leaves. With an unbothered expression on his face, he moved his hands, and his Dantian sea of chi surged. Close. The golden lotus vanished. Yu Shangrong hovered in midair as he surveyed the land beneath him with a thoughtful expression on his face. The green jade altar had always been a tranquil place. However, at this moment, all tranquility was lost as the place was destroyed. The rock slabs on the altar were cracked, and the area under the altar was wrecked. If the two opponents did not move their battle further away, the green jade altar would have been completely destroyed. The Nether Sect's disciples had difficulties calming down witnessing this. Although they could see the battle between Yu Shangrong and the monster. Based on the sound that rang from afar, they could tell the battle was fierce and terrifying. After a long while, the cacophony of noises finally died down. The Nether Sect's disciples leaped off the green jade altar. The altar was messy and chaotic. There were holes riddled on the ground as far as the eyes could see. They flew to the distance, following the trail of wreckage that was left in the wake of the battle. Shortly after, they arrived at the epicenter of the battle where the fighting had been the fiercest. Apart from a huge and deep area on the uneven ground, they did not see ant bodies. The trees, grasses, and plants in the vicinity that were full of life had all withered. What happened here? Everyone looked around their surroundings fearfully. There's more than one monster. I saw that person fling another person who was tied to a rope. It looked like a dried corpse, someone said before a retching noise could be heard. It seems like a puppeteering and witchcraft technique. This bodes ill for Mr. Second, I'm afraid. No way. Mr. Second's cultivation base is profound. There's no way he'd be defeated so easily. In this world, there's bound to be someone who's stronger than you. There's nothing certain in the world. The sect master once said that the power of an individual will always be inferior to the power of a group. When the disciples recalled the black avatar and the purple and black tentacles they saw on the green jade altar, they shuddered despite the warm temperature. The disciples were still busy speculating among themselves when a small purple circle rose into the sky nearby. It seemed like a cloud of purple smoke that resembled the shape of Ba Wu, the mount. It looked like a fox. Upon seeing this, the disciples immediately retreated in shock. The seemingly formed from energy Ba Wu said with a deep voice, Yu Shangrong must die. Then, the witchcraft circle disappeared along with the purple energy. Return. What do we do now? Do we just leave the green jade altar as it is? We should report this to the sect master first. Ding. Killed a target. Reward, 2,000 merit points. Zhou was in the midst of contemplating something when the notification sounded, causing him to frown slightly. Based on his previous experience, he knew killing a 1 to 5 leaf target was worth 1,000 merit points. Killing a 6 or 8 leaf target was worth 1,500 merit points. Why was he suddenly rewarded with 2,000 merit points? Zhou slowly rose to his feet, remembering Yu Shangrong. Zhenghai and Wuya had not been captured yet. It was far too early to consider their return to the pavilion, therefore, their actions would not give him any rewards. Moreover, his current disciples were not capable of this. The only person capable of killing such an elite target could only be Yu Shangrong. A frown could be seen on Zhou's face as he continued thinking to himself. 9 leaf? Then, he shook his head, dismissing his thoughts. Although Yu Shangrong was strong and profound, it was impossible for him to kill a 9 leaf target. Moreover, where could Yu Shangrong find a 9 leaf target? Is it possible that someone came to the same conclusion as I did? Did someone also think about severing the golden lotus to defeat an 8 leaf cultivator? Zhou recalled Jiang Aijian's words about his experience about reading about this matter during their discussion about the 9 leaf stage with Lang Luo and Pan Litian the other day. He knew he was not the only one in the world who was trying to figure out the 9 leaf state. Whether it was Yun Tian Luo, Gong Yuandu, or the Great Yan's imperial family, they were all trying to figure out the 9 leaf stage. Moreover, apart from Great Yan, there were Lu Lan, Roli, Qigong, and the other nations. There were plenty of cultivators in the world. It was impossible that nobody had thought about or tried to figure out the nine-leaf stage. All of a sudden, Zhou said, "Is anyone here?" A female disciple appeared inside the great hall. Pavilion Master. Summon Zhenghai over. Understood. Recently, Zhenghai had been hiding in the Evil Sky Pavilion. News of his death had spread far and wide. Naturally, there were many in the palace who were skeptical of this news. It did not matter. Zhenghai had an extensive information network. Zhou thought it was time to make Zhenghai earn his keep. Currently, news of Zhenghai's death had spread all around the place. On a peak 100 miles north of the green jade altar, the sun shone through the clouds on the forest, painting the forest with a golden light. "Greetings, second senior brother." Yi Tianqing respectfully and formally greeted Yu Shangrong as she stood behind him. "There's no need for such formalities, sixth junior sister." Yu Shangrong was carrying his longevity sword. He did not turn around. Instead, he was looking at the setting sun. Strangely, the setting sun looked more beautiful and captivating to him than it ever did before. After all, Great Yan was never short of such idyllic sceneries and mountains. "Second senior brother, are you all right?" Yi Tianqing was still having difficulty wrapping her mind around what she had seen. The rays of the setting sun fell on Yu Shangrong's body. He did not move as he softly said, "I'm all right. Your sword path has widened my horizons, second senior brother." Yi Tianqing praised him. However, upon recalling the earlier scene, Yu Shangrong shook his head. "It's too insignificant to mention. I heard that you've rejoined the Evil Sky Pavilion, second senior brother. I wonder if it's true." Yi Tianqing rarely bothered herself with the cultivation world. She had been cultivating in isolation all this while. She would only go out to run the occasional errand. When she had first heard about this news, she was skeptical. Yu Shangrong smiled faintly and said, "So, the hit list. It's true as well?" Yi Tianqing asked in surprise. At this moment, Yu Shangrong finally turned around. His gaze fell on Yi Tianqing. Yu Shangrong's gaze made Yi Tianqing feel nervous and tense. Ever since she left the Evil Sky Pavilion and became the derived Moon Palace Master whom everyone revered, the sixth elite on the Black Roll, and the Jade-Face Shura whose name alone struck fear in those who heard it, she had never felt as nervous as this. Yu Shangrong nodded again. Yi Tianqing was in awe. The hit list that was circulating in the cultivation was filled with elites. They were all impressive people, and yet, they all died by her second senior brother's sword. Just how strong was he and his techniques? A gentle smile could be seen on Yu Shangrong's face as he asked, "Sixth junior sister? Didn't Master forgive you?" Yi Tianqing was taken aback, speechless. Her expression turned unnatural. She did not know how to answer the question. Yu Shangrong had no intention of forcing an answer out of her. "You don't have to answer me if you don't want to." In the end, Yi Tianqing replied, "I'm afraid that I won't be able to return to the Evil Sky Pavilion ever again." Yu Shangrong said, "You have a long life ahead of you. Just be yourself." "You're right, second senior brother." Yi Tianqing nodded. "What plans do you have after this?" Yu Shangrong asked. Yi Tianqing did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the edge of the peak and looked down at the forest. She sighed softly with a lost look in her eyes. "I don't know. I'm like a headless fly." She suddenly felt that she had said too much, so she stopped talking. Yu Shangrong said, "If you don't have a goal now, just find a new one." Yi Tianqing was stunned. Her thoughts were not as simple as her second senior brother's. However, life was often not complicated. The more one worried, the more one would be restricted. Moreover, it was not like she had no goals. She was just not determined enough to pursue her goals. After a while, she asked, "Are you returning to the Evil Sky Pavilion after this, second senior brother?" "No." Yu Shangrong shook his head. "After I'm done with the hit list, I'll head north." "Where are you going?" Brackish Mountain.